I am James Willis. I am a professor of criminology, law and society. I'm also the chair of the department, and I have been at Mason since 2006, so about 17 years. So I think a lot about what is great about teaching, because I miss it in my current responsibilities as chair, where I spend a lot of time on administration and don't teach quite as often. I really enjoy the interaction with the students. Firstly, I don't think you really know a subject until you teach it, because it makes you really try and understand it to the best of your abilities. And then when you go into a classroom, you never really quite know what kinds of questions you're going to get and what your students are going to be interested in. So it's a very dynamic kind of process, and I often find that I learn from that process things that I didn't see or I didn't know that the students raise, and when I don't know something, I go and try and find out about it and bring it back to the class, or I'll ask a student to go and find out about it. So I really feel like, I know I'm the teacher in the classroom, which means I'm responsible ultimately, but I do like the give and take and hearing students' thoughts, seeing them learn the material, raising interesting questions, and yeah, that kind of dynamic environment, which is unpredictable but in a good way, is a really enjoyable facet of teaching and seeing people learn and enjoy the learning experience. So I'm a professor in criminology, law and society. What I like about it, on simple terms, it's really sort of the study of sort of crime and law breaking and wrongdoing. But it goes much beyond that. It makes us think about, how do we treat people that might have violated a law, but how do we treat them in ways that would encourage them not to do that kind of thing again, and even to think about laws more critically, whether they're just or unjust. So I think if you're really interested in issues around like law breaking in general, but also about justice and right and wrong, and how we treat people that have made mistakes in their past or those that are less advantaged than us, it's really a very broad area, and I might get this wrong, but I think Dostoevsky said you can judge a society by looking inside its prisons, and I think it says a lot about a society, how it treats people that have engaged in some kind of wrongful behavior. So when I think about some of the recent research projects that I've been working on, I'll talk about my two most recent ones, and where the person I'm working with is a colleague, Martinez Cohen, up at SUNY Oswego. One is we were really curious about how prosecutors use body-worn cameras. So there's a lot of research that's being done on how police officers use body-worn cameras and whether wearing a body-worn camera increases legitimacy in the eyes of ordinary civilians or citizens, the community, and whether they improve the way that police behave during encounters, or even if civilians improve their behavior because they feel like they're being watched. But we don't know much about the downstream effects. So if police are indeed the gatekeepers to the criminal justice system, what happens when that body-worn camera footage sort of moves to the next stage of the criminal legal process? And that's prosecutors, who have a tremendous amount of power to charge, to dismiss charges, to plea bargaining. So we were curious about how prosecutors are using body-worn camera footage, like what are some of the challenges they face, how it might influence the way that they do plea bargains, how does it fit into the discovery process in terms of evidence? Are there certain crime types that it really helps with? Are there certain areas where it's not very helpful? So that's one research project. The other research project, I've always been interested in the relationship between knowledge that is generated by experience or craft. So if you think about a master craftsperson who's a carpenter who spends a lot of time working with wood, their experience teaches them how to make beautiful things and how to deal with problems and how to choose the right kind of wood and the right tools. Well, that's true with a lot of kind of jobs, including the police, who rely very heavily upon their experience. So I was interested in learning more about that process, like how they take their experiences and turn it into good decision making, and how that kind of knowledge learned over many years of working the street might be packaged in a way and provided to others so they get the benefit of that experience. And then thinking a little bit about that in relationship to scientific knowledge. So my project is really a little esoteric in some ways with my colleague Martinez, which is to kind of look at the relationship between these two different forms of knowledge. How do police officers think about science? In what ways is it useful? What do they think of its limits? What's its relationship to craft knowledge? To learn a little bit more about those thoughts, and then we might find a way to create a better marriage between those two things. How could craft help science, and how could science help craft? So when I think about some of my fondest memories of Mason over the last 17 years, the one thing that I really like in the department is we have a 2-sequence honors class. And that's when students work with a professor on a hands-on research project. And then they get to present their findings, their original research findings, at the annual department awards ceremony. And I taught it on police officer decision making, trying to learn more about how officers make decisions and how you distinguish good patrol officer decisions from bad patrol officer decisions. Could you come up with criteria? And some of my fondest memories are watching the research projects of other professors, of their students presenting at the end of the year. We've had students that have done things around wrongful convictions and community crime prevention, other police projects. That's always kind of a highlight of the year, to see our undergrads, having done original research, presenting really interesting findings.